Okay, just want to make a little quick intro here to this video about why I'm making it. And it's September the 2nd, 2017, and over the last, I don't know, 6, 7 years, I've uploaded probably, I think about 60 videos to YouTube. I got like 1,200 subscribers. This is going to confuse the hell out of a lot of my subscribers. For the most part, I've uploaded remodeling videos, political videos, a couple of documentaries that are, not about UFOs at all. Just things I thought people would find interesting. A 3-part pellet stove review thing I did. Some old band videos. I'd been in bands, some music videos. I've got 2 videos on the subject of UFOs. One of which is Dan Aykroyd talking about the Men in Black. It's a weird topic. All this stuff is weird. What can I say? I don't know what to make out of any of this stuff. But anyway, underneath that video, I had mentioned that my interest in UFOs had been piqued when in 1994, myself and a bunch of coworkers had a very close-up UFO sighting that kind of changed how I look at the world. And people asked me questions, and I answered in the comments section as best I could. They said, we'd like to hear more about this. So anyway, it's kind of by request to an extent, and also it's something I kind of want to. I'm 65, I'm not in perfect health. Something I just kind of want to do for myself as well. And, at this stage of the game, I got no reason to make any of this up. What I'm telling you is the truth as best I can tell it. That's all I can say. I have no proof of any of it. If I did, I wouldn't be making a YouTube video. I'd be on, CNN or something. But it's a long story, and so this is highly detailed. I'm going to actually make it in 2 parts because of that. So with that, here's my video. Okie dokie. So I've been remodeling my house and finally found the time to do this. So what I'm going to talk about is back in 1994, March the 18th, it was a Friday morning, myself and a bunch of co-workers commuting from Flint, Michigan, driving to a small factory 50 miles south of Flint, Michigan, made a curve in the freeway and encountered this very large triangular craft that was silent and hovering just above a grove of trees and right to the right of the southbound lanes of an interstate freeway. It was crazy. And I'm going to get into that, in detail. But anyway, to put this into context, this happened on Friday, March the 18th, 1994. The 2 weeks leading up to that date, there had been a lot of news on the the mainstream news, like ABC World News Tonight and CBS Evening News, and about these UFOs being seen over on the west side of the state. Flint is kind of in the southeast side of the state. So they'd been seen near Holland, Michigan, and Sheboygan, Michigan. And they'd been tracked by National Weather Service radar and seen by pillars of the community and police. So this stuff made the national news. So I'd heard about it, and that was the only reason I'd heard about it, because I've already mentioned in the little intro here, I wasn't a UFO guy. I'm still not really. I'm no New Age kind of UFO freak. I'm a very skeptical person. As I said, I don't know what we saw, but. So there'd been this 2-week period leading up to this where I'd seen this stuff on the news, and it was odd, and I didn't know quite what to make of it. Anyway, I was living in Flint, had 2 kids and a wife. It was between good jobs, and I had this temp job in a little city called New Hudson, about 50 miles south of Flint. And I played music back then, and I was playing keyboards. I played in a little band 3 nights a week. And on Thursday, March 17th, me and my wife were about to leave the house, and I was going to drive out to a city called Imlay City, about 40 miles east of Flint, play music. And my mom lived with us, and somebody had bought a newspaper. My mom or my wife, we didn't take the paper. And there was a Flint Journal laying on an end, an end table as I was walking out of the house, right about the time we left. And there was an article on the front page, and it was a transcript of a 911 call of a lady calling the Flint Police Department, saying there was this huge object hovering above the house across the street, and it said like children screaming in background, blah blah blah. And it was a strange article. I'd never seen anything like that in the Flint Journal, and it was, this lady was calling from a crowded residential area. I was like, man, this is weird. So I didn't know what to think of it. I hopped in the car and to go out to play this little job with this band, and I'll never forget. If you're tend to be skeptical at all, a lot of red flags are going to go up here. I'll never forget. I said to my wife at the time, we're now divorced, I was driving out there, I said, man, it'd be cool to see a UFO. So, it brings to mind that old Chinese proverb, whatever it is, be careful what you wish for. I never thought I'd see a UFO, especially up close. So, went, played the gig, came home, got maybe 3 hours sleep. I had to be up at probably 3 hours sleep at most. Got up at like, I don't know, I had to be to work at 6, got up at like 4:30 in the morning, dressed, hopped on the freeway. If you're familiar with the area, I drove about 7 miles west on I-69. I lived in Genesee, Michigan, which is like a little suburb of Flint, up the northeast corner. Went west about 6, 7 miles. Then you hit I-75. There's a clover leaf you take, and you get on I-75 to go south. The minute you get on I-75 to go south, you kind of go up a little hill. You go over an overpass over Bristol Road, and there's the airport, the local airport, Flint's Bishop International Airport, which is not some big international, community, or it's not really a hub of transportation internationally, but it's called Flint International Airport. It's right there at your southwest. You're on this overpass, and the airport's down here. So you're elevated a little bit. It's still dark outside. And south of the airport, real low on the horizon, I saw these two brilliant white headlights. And I remember thinking, man, that's a big plane landing in Flint. Because, like I said, it's called Flint International Airport, but it's not some huge travel hub. And I didn't think commercial planes landed at that time, or I hadn't seen any. And I thought it was a big plane. That's all I thought. So came off the overpass. I was then not elevated. I couldn't see that's an area of urban sprawl for about, 2 miles. And I couldn't really see those lights. I think I caught sight of them once or twice. There's a lot of buildings, and I-75 splits up. I bared right and took US 23 again. There's two interstate freeways. So I stayed on US 23 to go to this little job in New Hudson, still a fairly heavily traveled interstate freeway. But it was 5 o'clock in the morning. So went about 2 miles south of the airport, and then the freeway curves to the west for about maybe a quarter of a mile, then curves back to the south. And right where that happens, you enter an area of where it becomes kind of unobstructed. It was March. There were no leaves on the trees. And as I made that first curve to the west, I suddenly could see those lights clearly. And what shocked the hell out of me was they were really low on the horizon. They were not moving. It obviously was not an airplane. I considered it might be a helicopter, but the lights were a really odd color of white, and they were kind of shimmering, and they were quite a distance apart. It looked like whatever it was a big object. And from the looks of it, it was pretty clear to me that once I curved south, this thing appeared to be hovering right near the freeway that I was traveling on. And I was not, at that point, I got pretty damn nervous. I started having like a full-blown kind of anxiety attack. It was dark outside. I'm in a car by myself. Just the lights on this thing looked crazy. They didn't look right. And there's nothing out there. This is, for anybody that might be familiar with the area, this is between Baldwin and Thompson Roads. There's I think Thompson Road has an exit and Baldwin doesn't, but it's about a little mile area of space there. And this thing appeared to be sitting real close to the freeway. And in fact, when I made this curve south in a quarter of a mile, I realized, holy crap, this thing is big, it's real insanely low, and it's just to the right of the southbound lanes that I'm traveling in. Just to the right of it. Okay, so as I'm approaching this thing, which obviously is, I'm going to drive almost underneath. It's just, the nearest headlight of the thing is almost it's almost touching the lane I'm driving in. I just want to turn around and go the other way. I just want to get out of there. I just had a very ominous feeling about it. It's not like I was hearing a voice in my head or anything, but I remember having the feeling I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to be here. And I don't know where that was coming from. Like I said, I didn't hear voices, communicating with me in my head or anything like that. And the other thing I kept wondering, is this happening all over the world right now? Because without even having seen the form of this thing, this was so odd. This is kind of a rural area here at this point. It's, 5 o'clock in the morning, maybe 5:05, something like that. And this is just something that doesn't belong there. And it's big. So as I approach it, I started really coming unwound. And there was just no place to turn around. I didn't have any choice but to keep going. So a couple of things people always ask me. They always ask me, did you take a picture? Number one, it was 1994. I didn't have a cell phone. Everybody's different. If I would have had a cell phone, I don't think I would have been taking pictures. I was too scared. And the other thing they asked me is, well, I mentioned that I was too scared to pull over, but people always are surprised about the fact that nobody else had pulled over, because even though it was 5 in the morning, I vaguely recall there was a truck ahead of me, like a semi or a panel truck or some kind of cube van or something. There was traffic on the freeway. It was sparse, but nobody had pulled over. And here's this huge thing sitting. It's almost touching the tops of a full-grown grove of trees. And finally, I get right up to the thing. I slow way down, look up at it. I had to go, like this kind of to see it. And there was a reddish orange light on the bottom, kind of pulsating or throbbing like a heartbeat, just bleep, bleep. When it lit it up, I could see what it was, and what it was just kind of like a big bloated flying apple turnover. It was just this. I'm not great at estimating size. I would say it was 150 foot to 200 foot on each side. It was a huge equilateral triangle with a striated bottom, like looked metallic, like there was an old there was an arcade game or something called Battlestar Galactica or something. It looked like something out of a sci-fi movie, and it was utterly silent. There was no low hum. There was no sound whatsoever. It did not interfere with, my car's radio, or I didn't have the radio on, but I mean, the electrical system of my car, nothing like that. But I slowed way, way down when I got right under it. And when I saw that, I really flipped out, because I was like, it just didn't look like anything I'd ever seen in my life. And had this thing been on a horizontal plane, I could have hit it with a rock. I mean, it was maybe, I don't know. Here's this thing 100 foot by 100 foot or 150 foot on each side, and it's maybe 100 foot in the air, 120 foot. So I dropped hit the gas pedal, went about 500 yards, almost to an exit at Thompson Road there, but that's out in the country. There's nothing there. Wasn't about to get off. Hit the brakes, looked back, and that orange light at the bottom of that thing was still, pulsating, and it was lighting up the tops of those trees. And because the headlights weren't in my eyes at that point, and I just lost it totally. Then I just flipped. I literally floored the car. I passed, I think, 2 exits. I drove all the way to a town called Fenton, Michigan. I got off at Owen Road. I walked in this gas station convenience store thing, and I was going, there's this huge thing out on the freeway. It's hovering above the freeway. It's triangular, blah, blah. And these people are looking at me like, what mental institution did this guy just walk away from? But I was, I was freaked. I mean, I was beyond freaked. I tried to call my wife with a payphone they had there, and it didn't work. So got on the freeway, had about another 35 miles to go to get to work, to this little factory. We made parts for Ford, kind of a minimum wage junk job. And just hoping to hell I didn't see anything like that the rest of the way, and I didn't. So that was good. So anyway, I get to work, and there's a buzz in the factory. A lot of people have seen this thing. Anybody who was driving from Flint on US 23 to New Hudson down near Brighton would have seen it. And a lot of people that worked at that factory were from Flint. So there was, like I said, kind of a buzz in the factory. I don't know how many people exactly saw it, but I was working on a line that day, and hanging cowlings. Like I said, we made parts for Ford, and the clipping flash off of the things, are hanging stuff on the line that was moving by, and I could not stop talking about this thing. And I was just literally in a state of kind of shock, and it's just it was just a shocking, really, I would go so far as it was kind of horrifying experience at the time. And I was talking about it, and I got my first lesson in how this subject is not an acceptable topic of conversation, and among some people. I was talking about this thing and trying to sort out what had happened, and this young black kid wheeled around suddenly and said, "I'll tell you what, man, you better stop talking about UFOs and start talking about God, man." And I was like, "Whoa, what's that about?" Because I was just trying to figure out what this was, and I've never been particularly religious at all, and so I didn't really get that, but with some hindsight, I can see where if you're very extremely religious, maybe this would call into question your religious views or whatever. But anyway, this kid was he's downright hostile, So my first break, I talked to a number of people. I remember one young couple in particular. They both worked there, a guy and his girlfriend. tall blonde kid, had bib overalls, looked like he ate nails for breakfast. Didn't look like much would scare him. Looked like a farm boy, you know. And his eyes were like saucers. They were like this, you know. He came up to me and he said, man, what was that? What was that thing? And I'm like, I don't know, you know, some kind of UFO, you know. It was, and him and his girlfriend were shook up. Some lady chimed in and said, oh, I've seen that before. It's a state police helicopter. And we were all like, what's she talking about? What we, you know, what I saw, what they saw, obviously was what everybody else saw. Was no helicopter. I don't know how many people saw it. Talked to a couple other people. I don't remember the specifics. I remember that young couple in particular because he was really shook up, and so was his girlfriend. So anyway, I finished the day and drove home back to Flint, thinking that certainly, since this was next to an interstate freeway, there was likely to be something on the 6 p.m. TV news or perhaps the 11 p.m. TV news. So there wasn't. I watched, and there was nothing on the news, you know. So when there was nothing on the news, I was like, man, that's weird. I thought, absolutely, this will be in the newspaper the next day. So on the 17th, or pardon me, the 17th, I'm going backwards. On the 19th, I jumped out of bed, ran up to the gas station, bought a Flint Journal, the local newspaper, only to find there was nothing in the newspaper either. So I was really shocked, as I said, that there's nothing in the newspaper, because this thing's sitting next to an interstate freeway, maybe 4 miles south of a heavily populated urban area, Flint, Michigan. And how did this not get either on the TV news or in the newspaper? And I lived, as I said, with my wife and 2 kids and my mom, and they know me. They know I've had an interesting life. I don't tell fish stories. I'm not much of a liar at all. We all tell white lies now and then, but I've had a very interesting, fun life playing music in Nashville and Las Vegas and Washington, D.C., all over the country, really, and lived in those places. But, you know, I'm not going to make up a story like this. But I still wanted something to show them, just to corroborate, you know, that, you know, it's a wild story, just the sighting itself. And when there was nothing in the newspaper, I hatched the idea of I thought, well, maybe I'll call the newspaper. I thought they must have had some reports. And so I called them and explained myself, talked to one person who seemed totally disinterested, and they gave me to another guy who seemed kind of equally dismissive, and he listened to what I had to say, and I really was trying to find out from him if anybody else had made a report as much as anything. And he kind of listened to me. Just the tone of his voice was very, again, dismissive. He kind of grudgingly conceded that he would take a report from me. And he said, well, you know, I'll take a report and blah, blah, blah. This is after I told him, you know, a very brief version of what had happened. And he said, okay, what's your name? And I started thinking at that point, you know, this is 1994, I'm thinking, if nobody else has called the newspaper, okay, which is what he's telling me, do I want my name on an article about seeing a UFO like this, you know, in the newspaper? And the answer was no. So I don't recall just what I said to the guy, but I think I said something to the effect, maybe if you get some more calls, if I see something in the paper, I'll talk to you further. But, you know, at this point, I'm just going to drop this. And I got off the phone because I didn't want, as I said, a story about spaceships or whatever this thing was. I don't know what it was. I still don't know what it was exactly. But a lot of strange things were about to be revealed to me that, to this day, I don't know where to put any of it intellectually or emotionally or whatever. So the newspaper thing went nowhere. Then I thought, finally, my kind of Hail Mary was, I thought, well, I'll call to Bishop Airport and ask to talk to the tower. And I didn't know if they would even put me through to the tower. So I certainly from the height of that tower, the control tower at the airport, they would have absolutely seen these lights and wondered what the hell is that if they did not have it on radar. So I called the airport as a final, the final chapter in my little mini investigation, or so I thought it would be. So I called up the airport and said, I saw something odd in the sky and I wondered if I could speak to the tower. And without any objection or fanfare, they said no problem, or they just said certainly, just a moment, or whatever. They put me on hold for a minute and connected me, they said, to the control tower. And that's odd because over the course of the next week, I called 2 more times and asked to be connected to the tower, and they said categorically that they never do that. It's against policy, and they couldn't do it. So, go figure. That first call that I made, they said, yeah, we'll connect you to the tower. And I got a guy who was, seemed like a nice guy. He seemed, mildly interested. His story was they had seen nothing. They had painted nothing on radar. And, I described to him what I had seen in as much detail as I could. And he started asking me these questions, kind of leading me in the... After I described to him what I'd seen, which was this very close-up, this pretty large triangular object with a metallic bottom and these crazy lights on it, he asked me things like, could it have been a star? Could it have been a blimp? Just crazy stuff that was totally inconsistent with what I had described and was goofy. And I got kind of exasperated with that. And I stopped him and said, can I ask you a question? And he said, yeah, go ahead. And I said, you're an air traffic controller. I said, have you ever seen anything you couldn't explain? And this was a seminal moment in my little UFO journey thing. He says, this is a quote too. This is an absolute, the air quotes here, they're very appropriate. This is a quote. His words ring in my ears. He said, let's put it this way. Uncle Sam signs my paycheck, so if I did, I couldn't tell you. That was a shocker to me. I was like, so that's how this is? And he said, but he didn't take a breath, and he said, but here's a number for you to call. And he gives me this 800 number for an outfit called MUFON, which is an acronym for Mutual UFO Network, and something that I'd never heard of. But he said you can make a report to these guys, and they might have reports on this thing. So call them. So I called this number that the guy at the airport gave me for this outfit called MUFON, and it was an 800 number. I think the headquarters of it were out in the West Coast. I don't know why that I have that memory. I think it was like in Washington State or something like that. And I get this guy, and he's very businesslike, and he has not had a report, and I'm still kind of all jacked up about this. And people see these all the time, and I'm like it's no big deal. Well, it's a big deal to me, But he had taken no reports of this, so he said, I'd mentioned I lived in Michigan, of course, and he said, well, do you live anywhere near Flushing, Michigan? And I said, yeah, Flushing is it's a little commuter town, nice little town just to the west of Flint, maybe 6 miles, and it's not far at all. And he said, well, the state director of MUFON lives in Flushing, Michigan. Her name is Shirley Coyne, so you might want to call her. So I'm like, okay, here we go again. I'll try that. So this is when things really start getting crazy. All right, before I talk about this phone call I made to Shirley Coyne, which finally did prove to help corroborate all of this stuff and also provided some pretty weird information and led me down an entirely new trail. I want to digress just a little bit. I've mentioned that I saw nothing on the TV news and I had found nothing in the newspaper regarding my specific sighting. And memory kind of failed. All of these years, 23 years now, I'd thought that I'd looked at the newspapers around that time pretty carefully after this happened, and apparently I didn't. Apparently I ran up and bought a newspaper on Saturday, March 19th. There was nothing in the newspaper about the sighting I'd had, nor any other sort of UFO story. And that was it, because about 6 months ago, here it is, 23 years later, 2017, I'm going to Flint. I still live east of Flint, about 20 miles. I was going to Flint to get some new glasses, and I said to my fiancée, she was with me, I said, I want to stop at the library and look at the newspapers, the Flint Journal on microfilm for, around this time that this happened on March 18th. I thought I'll start with March 18th. Now, lo and behold, this was the headline on March 18th, 1994, the Flint Journal. Oh my God, what is this? I'd never seen that, which was a shocker to me. Now, that does not refer specifically to the sighting that I had, by the way. That is a quote from a National Weather Service radar operator in Sheboygan, Michigan, who was looking at a huge blob on a screen that jumped 10 miles in 10 seconds. I also found this. It says, Flint Youth 14 report sighting of UFO. I'd never seen that. That was published on the 15th of March, and it refers to a sighting on the 10th by a young kid on the east side of Flint who said he saw a huge triangular craft. I think he said it was like half a mile away, but he described it as being as big as his street. I'm guessing he meant his block. Sounds like the same thing I saw from 100 feet, so I know I scared him. And he ran into his house, huddled in the bathroom, and watched it float over the the neighborhood. So that was real interesting to me. Obviously, it describes the same kind of object, although from a much further distance. Again, I thought I'd look at these newspapers. I was kind of in a catatonic state, though, for about 2 weeks after this happened. I was far too close to this thing. I always described this as kind of fire in the sky without the movie or the money. It was, as I've said, it was kind of a horrifying experience. I did find these reports. I'm going to put some links underneath this video if you'd like to read these reports. I've transcribed them and put them on a simple domain that doesn't have ads or anything, and you can read them. So I'm on this mission from God, so to speak, to get a little corroboration and learn a little bit more about what this might have been. And I call this lady Shirley Coyne. And very nice lady. She reminded me of my mom. I told her, what I'd seen and blah, blah, blah. And she said, "Oh, honey, you're not going crazy. 2 ladies carpooling to Lucas Surtec the night before, about 6 hours before my little sighting, about 10:30 at night. 2 ladies carpooling to Lucas Surtec in Fenton, Michigan from Flint. Drove their car right under this thing," she said, and it was straddling both lanes of the freeway. But she added that these ladies drove their car underneath this thing on their second trip south on US 23 headed to Fenton, and that they'd been going south. They started laughing because they suddenly realized, for reasons they couldn't explain, they were going north suddenly, and they had to get off at an exit and turn around and go south, and on their second pass they went underneath this thing. She added that they felt like this took them maybe 10 minutes and they got to work like an hour late. So I'm thinking, what are we talking here? What, missing time, alien abduction? I'm like, come on, this is kooky. Even though I'd seen this thing, I was like, at that point in my life, I was loath to consider that sort of thing to any great extent. And I, even though she seemed real nice, and I was happy to get somebody to corroborate that other people had seen this, and she's kind of an authority in this field, so to speak, being the state director of MUFON. Anyway, so that was good, but she had this kooky story about these ladies who got turned around and saw it the second time they went south, and they had missing time and this and that, so I'm like, okay. And she asked me if she could come to my home and take a report, and they have a little form that you fill out and you try to draw it, and I'm no artist. Other people have asked me to draw the thing. Maybe I will in a second video or something. I don't know how well I could draw it, but anyway, I said, that's no problem, come on out. And I don't recall that day, Saturday or Sunday, she and another lady came to my house for about an hour or so. So as I said, Shirley Coyne comes to my house, and I just recall her being a very sweet lady, and she had a chain with a crucifix and an energy crystal. So she's somewhere between religious and New Age. I don't know, but we talked. I filled out their form and I drew it, and we talked about various things. And very sweet lady. And at some point, she told me, and this is when things became, I started wondering if she was okay. She told me that she'd already told me about these 2 ladies, and that was weird. But she told me that she was sad because she had a teenage son. He was 16 or 17, and she didn't see him very often because she said he lived aboard one of these craft. Whatever. It's, I guess a spaceship or a UFO or whatever. So that struck me so bizarrely that I was like, I didn't know what to make of Shirley Coyne at that point because it sounded just totally cuckoo. It sounded like something from one of the really bad tabloids, worse than the National Enquirer. It just sounded like horse manure. But she was so nice. I was glad that she was willing to listen to me. As I said, she's kind of an authority in this field, so whatever. But that left me wondering about her. Was she compos mentis? Was she crazy or what? One thing she did say to me too, which is relevant, I suppose. The last thing on Shirley Coyne is, she said to me, "Don't let this interfere with your faith in God or have a negative effect on it." As I said, I've never been religious, so for me, that really wasn't a powerful objection that I had to any of this stuff. There's just what she was saying about she's got a kid that lives in a UFO, a spaceship or whatever. It sounded crazy, but anyway, that's what happened. She took the report, or another lady came, and I thought at least I'd made a report that I was going to try to probably spend the rest of my life trying to sort this thing out, put some bookends on it, and I thought I would endeavor at that point to just forget about it. But, I don't know. This is a hard thing to forget about. And then things got crazier and crazier. So the weekend comes and goes, and I make this report to Shirley Coyne, and I go to work and make it kind of a point not to even talk about the subject of UFOs at work. I didn't tell anybody I made a report to this MUFON outfit or anything like that. And been working at this little temp job for about 2 months is all. And I've got, by sheer coincidence, as you'll see why I say that in a moment, I have literally one friend in this factory that I know on a first name basis there. It's a black lady named Carolyn. Very sweet gal, smart, funny, sophisticated by the standards of the gene pool at Deco Manufacturing was not terrific. I'd like to think that I stuck out like a sore thumb and she did too, but just a fun, smart lady. Her husband worked at a plant in Flint. She had 2 kids working down there like me, just to pick up a few extra bucks and temporarily. And just a funny, smart gal. She had sung in bands and got out of that and was singing at a big church, and a Baptist church in Flint. Really involved with her church family and singing at church. We used to do lunch together and that sort of thing. And just her and I were good work buddies. So I don't believe I saw her at all on Friday when I saw this UFO. And I didn't see her that Monday all day during the workday. As a temporary employee, we might work in different departments on different days. And so anyway, when they sounded the buzzer to go home that day, who do I see running up to me but Carolyn? And she didn't look like Carolyn. She always looked, she just always dressed nicer than everybody else, always smiling and happy, and she looked really, really distressed and just looked frightful, and I didn't know what was going on. And she said, Guy, you've got to call me after work. And she gave me her phone number because, I didn't have her phone number. We didn't socialize outside of work, and I had no idea why she wanted me to call her. That, it was a mystery to me. I did not associate it with this UFO thing. So, drove home, 45 minutes home, gave it a little while, and I rang her up and said, hey, Carolyn, what's going on? Or something like that. And she said, Guy, what does Iron Tomb mean? What does Iron Tomb mean? She just kept repeating, what does Iron Tomb mean? And I was like, what? And I said to her, Carolyn, what are you talking about? And she said, she segued into this long story, and what she said was the following, and I made contemporaneous notes. I've always been a writer. I wrote this down. I still remember almost everything she said. What she said to me was, she said, Guy, last Friday on that morning when everybody at the shop said they saw this UFO, she said, me and Felicia were in my van. She said, I was driving and Felicia was sleeping, and she said, we didn't see anything in the sky. We didn't see a UFO. We didn't see anything. But she said at one point, we thought we hit black ice, which is in the Midwest. They talk about black ice is ice that you can't see. And it was March, it was still cold out, and her van started spinning. And she said, Felicia woke up screaming because the van was spinning. And Felicia said, don't hit the brakes. And Felicia said, Guy, we were spinning, but as we were spinning, the van was spinning at an accelerating rate. We were going faster and faster and faster. And she said, I get sick on carnival rides, and I didn't even get nauseated. And she kept saying that she saw the lights of the cars, and she was fearful that they were going to be struck as they spun by oncoming cars. And she kind of lowered her voice, and she was almost like crying, kind of. And she said, but Guy, then I realized we were going up. We were going up in the air. And I was like, what the hell? And she said that the next thing she remembered was, it felt like her van was being, and it was a full-size conversion van, it was a big vehicle, being pulled across the median as if there was a magnet behind it. And she said it came to kind of a violent stop, and that the odd thing was that she had a bunch of stuff sitting on shelves in the conversion van, and she said it was so weird. She said we came to this violent stop, but nothing fell off the shelves. And literally, I have this written down somewhere. That's why I remember it. And she said that Felicia said the first thing that either one of them spoke was, she said that the passenger, Felicia, who worked at the shop with us, said, isn't God wonderful? And Carolyn said, yes, he is. And Felicia said, at least we'll be to work on time. Their perception being that they'd spun out or something and it had been taking seconds. So they pulled back onto the freeway. They were on the shoulder of the road. They pulled back on and started driving. And according to Carolyn, I said to Carolyn, I said, what way were you going when you got back on the freeway? And she said, well, that's the thing, too. We thought we were going south still, but then we realized we were going north. And I was like, holy crap. This is mirroring this story told to me by this MUFON lady. So I said, well, where did you get off and turn around to go south again? And she said Grand Blanc Road, which was the exit just north of where I'd seen this. And then to top things off, she said, and when we got to work, she said, we left really early. And she said, you were on the line and everybody was on the line. And we looked up and we were 45 minutes or an hour late. And again, this is exactly the story I heard from this lady at MUFON, And at that point, I told Carolyn, I said, well, I made a report to this outfit that takes UFO reports. And this woman told me like a story just like yours, that two ladies carpooling to a factory in Fenton, which is not as far as where we worked in terms of going south. I told Carolyn, I said, these two ladies that worked at Lucas Surtech in Fenton had kind of a similar experience. She didn't mention them spinning around, but, that they were going south. Then they ended up going north. They had to turn around. They got to work 45 minutes late. And Carolyn was really a mess. She was extremely upset. I mean, to put it mildly. She was really I don't want to say, hysterical. Might be too strong, but she was really distraught. And I was actually worried about her, being okay. And I talked to her a couple times more during that week, which I don't remember. She was remembering more a bit at a time. I'll talk about that in a bit. But anyway, at that point, I was just in a state of shock. I mean, I'd seen this thing, which was shocking enough, but now I've got a story, two independent stories from two sets of women who don't know each other at all, that are really outlandish and are almost identical. Alrighty then, as I said, I'm going to divide this into two sections because it's long. I've described a lot of really odd things already, although if I make a part two, I probably will. It's some much weirder stuff was yet to come, and it's kind of been a lifelong journey for me. I'm not consumed with this stuff. It obviously did have an impact on me. I don't know what to make of any of it. You go on the internet, you go on YouTube or whatever, and people claim that they know exactly what this stuff is. They're from here, they're from there, they're this, they're that. I don't know. You told me. About 5 years ago, and I'll discuss that at length, and if I make a part two, I probably will. I think these things showed up around whatever they are. One of them showed up around my house twice in a week. In the middle of the night, I think. Or something. Something weird happened. I'll get into that. And the story of these two ladies that were friends of mine is much crazier than I thought it was, even talking to Carolyn. So if you have any questions about this video, or you want to say, you're a liar and you're a fool, that's fine. Write your questions or your attacks. I don't care. I don't care. Beneath this, and I'll attempt to answer any questions you've got that I can answer in part two as well. I'll do that. I'm babysitting my puppies here, so all I can tell you is what I've told you is the truth as best I know how to tell it. So if there's any interest in this video, I'll post a part two pretty darn soon.